has got to say after Matua Jose's speech?
Hopefully they're not laughing.
Mr. Speaker, Labor will be opposing this bill, and Labor will be opposing this bill in a very strenuous way because, Mr. Speaker, this is a dark day for New Zealand. This is a day when this three-headed monster of a government is taking New Zealand backwards. It is taking New Zealand backwards not based on any benefit to New Zealand, certainly not putting New Zealand first, but it is taking New Zealand backwards for the sake of it and for the sake of political sloganeering. Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to spend the time of my speech reminding those on the opposition benches of the large body of climate science that tells us about the need to keep oil and gas in the ground. I'm taking that as a given, and I'm assuming members opposite actually do engage in that literature. But, Mr. Speaker, I am going to spend my time in this speech talking about how today signifies a time when the three parties of this government firmly plant in the ground their backwards-looking plan that is no plan. All three parties in this coalition are showing their true colours today. And, Mr. Speaker, they will be judged by their actions for generations to come. This is a bill that certainly does not put New Zealand first. It puts New Zealand at risk. This bill is quite simply climate-denying, populist, right-wing virtue signalling. So why are they doing this? Let's go through the stated reasons why they are doing it. Let's read from the explanatory notes. They're saying it's to ensure that gas remains a transition fuel until viable and cost-effective alternatives are in place. Well, Mr. Speaker, let's go through those claims. Let's examine it. Ensuring that gas remains a transition fuels. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is entirely different. And they know that, Mr. Speaker, because their own regulatory impact statement for the bill tells them that. Paragraph 37 tells them that exploration activity in New Zealand has been declining since 2014 and before the 2018 ban on new petroleum exploration outside of onshore Taranaki. And this is consistent with global trends in upstream oil and gas. So, Mr. Speaker, they have it in black and white, that the fact is that gas production in New Zealand had been declining. And, Mr. Speaker, they need to face reality. There is no guarantee that investors will come. Their own advice tells them that. And there is no guarantee that anything will be found. And even then, Mr. Speaker, if they did find something, it takes on average 16 years to take it from exploration to production. So any crocodile tears and claims that we hear about how this is an immediate panacea for our energy situation are simply false. It will be 2040 at a minimum before we would see any of the gas from the reversal of this ban. But the Minister has come up with a plan of what he sees as the fact that internationally people are not investing in new oil and gas. It simply isn't there in New Zealand, and it hasn't been commercially viable for a couple of decades. The Minister has a plan, and that has been cocking up what inducements he can offer to offshore multinational big oil and gas companies to come to New Zealand. When his officials told him that he couldn't really use the taxpayer's dime to underwrite the risk for these multinational companies to come to New Zealand, he's gone back to the playbook of Muldoon, Mr. Speaker, and he said he wants to put in place Muldoon-esque 30-year off-take gas agreements, once again putting the New Zealand taxpayer at risk. Not content with this, because, Mr. Speaker, absolutely have no illusions. This bill is the wish list of the oil and gas industry. This is not the wish list of the New Zealand public. This is not putting New Zealand first, and certainly the Minister's plans around decommissioning, once again putting New Zealand taxpayers on the hook for the hundreds of millions of dollars that it costs to clean up big oil and gas's mess after Tui, are once again going to be on play, because this is a government that is beholden to the oil and gas industry. They do not have New Zealanders' interests at heart. They have the big end of town.
Okay.
I think that sums it up pretty clearly, though, doesn't it?
They have the oil industry at heart.
I mean, I had an epic speech written, but it wasn't like that. She blew mine out of the water.
And for those at home, we had to slow down to 1.5 to understand her. She doesn't quite speak as slowly as Shane Jones.
I'd like to point out as well, she is also from the South Island, and when she was Minister of Energy, she had a plan that would have benefited Otago. Just pointing that out.
Was that Lake Onslow?
That was Lake Onslow.
Oh, I'm so sad that was gutted. Oh man, the engineering behind that would have been beautiful to watch.
Yeah, and relatively easy to do. That area is quite good for that particular, and already has a gravity-fed reservoir about 50 kilometres up the road.
Should we look at Steve Abel or Simon Court?
Bring on Simon Court, because I've got a speech prepared.